we are going to be talking about the requirements and expectations for Summer Youth Program 2013. Today on our webinar, we have myself. I'm your guide, Dee Reinhardt. I have also working on the back end of things, helping us make sure that everything goes smoothly, Natasha Telger, Chelsea Jones, and Lacey Pollock, all of Illinois WorkNet. And we have Tammy Stone and Sheila Sloan, both with the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. And both of them are going to talk about specific items related to the program today. This webinar, we're going to talk about grant requirements, grant expectations, and we're going to answer some questions for you. We have a presentation from both Tammy and Sheila on specific topics. So today, talking about programming is Tammy Stone. And Tammy, welcome to the webinar. And you're going to be talking about eligibility, the youth application, site management, evaluations, and some of the forms. And I'm going to move Tammy's screen share over so that she can start into her presentation. So Tammy, do you want to say hello to the folks while we're
Hello, everyone. This is Tammy Stone. First of all, I want to tell all of you guys thank you so much for your quick and efficient work in getting the RFA to us. This has been a pretty quick turnout or a rollout of the Summer Youth Employment Program, so we really appreciate all of you guys' hard work. We had a lot of applications come in, and the funding requests way out exceeded the amount that we have available. And so as a result of that, we had to realign a little bit, and that's why we're shortening the term of the program, and we're making it more targeted to the summer months because the funding was not nearly as much as what we had requested. So I am going to the program processes basically and what we anticipate for this program, the Summer Youth Employment Program. Close that. Okay, obviously to start this with the RFA, we requested you to develop some employment modules for this program. And the modules were in one or a number of any of the following. So you could design employment program for the younger youth, which is 14 to 16 in-school youth. You could design a program for work experience for the in-school youth, which was 16 to 21. Or work experience projects for out-of-school youth, 16 to 24, or community gardens. Or you could do a combination of the two. You weren't restricted to just one. You could do a combination of the two. And we got quite a few great applications in on that. One of the things that we had requested was in this that you take a look at targeted careers, the 16 career clusters. And we'll get into this a little bit later in the presentation. But these are also a part of our Illinois Pathways project. So to focus on one of these 16 career clusters when working with these kids and placing them in employment. Okay, we're going to get right into the meat of what we need to do and what you need to know for running this program. First thing I want to discuss is the youth eligibility. In the downloaded files, there is a procedures manual that's very explicit on all of our conditions on this grant. So just make sure before today is over, all the files that are on the left-hand side to the bottom of the screen that you download those because you will need those in the implementation of this program. Okay, first of all, with youth participant eligibility, youth have to be 14 to 24 years old, and they have to participate in one of the following programs, the National School Lunch Program, Workforce Investment Act, Food Stamp SNAP Program, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, or Court-Involved or At-Risk Youth. Or if they're not in any of those programs, then their family income cannot exceed 200% of the federal poverty level. So for eligibility, basically document. You need to have documentation, and in the procedures manual under attachment A, we have all of these different eligibility criteria listed out and what is eligible documentation for it or sites to go to. So make sure to reference that attachment A in the procedures manual. But you're going to be taking an application on these clients. Applications are going to be done online, and I'm going to show you what the printed out one looks like here in a second through Illinois WorkNet. So you're going to be the clients are going to be filling out applications, and then you need to verify their eligibility based upon one of these criteria. Additional requirements for this program is they have to be Illinois residents. You need to have an I-9 form completed before they can start work. And there's a website right there for the I-9 form, but this has to be completed and it has to be on file before a participant can start work. And if the participant is 14 or 15 years old, they must have a work permit. So you cannot place them in employment until you have their work permit. Okay, what's on the screen right now is a screen print of the application from the Illinois WorkNet system. Like I said, all of your processes are going to be done through Illinois WorkNet. So you're going to be entering applications on that. You're going to be entering your employers, your work sites in Illinois WorkNet. Everybody's intake processes may be a little bit different. You may want to, if you're going to do like a group orientation, and if you have a computer lab, you can have all of the kids come in, do a group orientation, and then send them in the computer lab, and they can fill out the application online with your guidance. And then there's multiple fields, obviously, in this application. And what you're going to need to do is once this application is completed and they've been determined eligible with the supporting documentation, then the applicant will sign their document. If they're younger than 18, the legal guardian needs to sign the document also. And then the case manager or whoever the provider is with your organization will sign and date the document. This document needs to be included in a client file, and it needs to be supported by their eligibility documentation. So when program monitors come out to take a look at your programs, you need to have a client file for each applicant or each youth participant, including the application and supporting documentation for eligibility. Okay. Moving on from that, we're going to go into the actual program requirements. First of all, case management and supportive services will be performed for this program. Case management is going to include, outreach and intake for youth participants. You're going to do assessments of those participants to figure out what jobs to place them in. You're going to also be doing outreach for employers. You want to make sure that you have good quality employers and good quality work sites that you're placing these participants in. And when you're assessing the youth, you want to make sure that their interest or specific needs will be met by the work site. So if you have somebody that has disability needs, that you're placing them in a work site that is accessible. The work sites, of course, we want to make sure that they have proper supervision and that they're safe for our participants. So with the work experience part of it, you're going to do the intake for the youth, and you're going to find the job sites and the work sites, and then you're going to assess the participants, and then you're going to place them in those jobs. We also have a work readiness component, which is a required component, and that's going to be done through Illinois WorkNet, and I'll explain that in a slide coming up. There's also career education possibilities, and I'll go through that in another slide too, but this is something else under the case management part that you're going to be working with, is introducing them and through our Illinois pathways to career education opportunities. And then, of course, supportive services and assessment. And then you're going to be doing follow-up on the participants, and then if you need to refer them to for any other services, supportive services, that's what you're going to be doing under case management. So for the supportive services, activities that are allowed is transportation assistance if they need bus passes, daycare, work clothes if it's not provided by the employer and it's required for the job, any tools and supplies that's relevant to what they're doing, and this is something that maybe it's not provided by the employer either. But the tools and supplies have to be relevant to the position, and they have to be required for them to be working there. And then we have a supportive services form that's going to be required for the use. So we have a standardized form to document use of supportive services. And along with that documentation, you need to have the invoices and pay vouchers and everything for your supportive services to document the supportive services form. There will not be any promotional items allowed, so you can't go out and buy like coffee mugs with a specific emblem on it. No T-shirts unless it's specifically required for the job, so we don't want any promotional items purchased with this grant money. Now with work readiness, this is going to be done in the Illinois WorkNet. What's going to be required with this is a pre-test, a post-test, and then learning activities. And the success of this is going to be gauged as scoring 70 or higher on the post-test. And you can design your implementation of the work readiness however meets your specific needs. Traditionally, over a 6-week period, we're looking at about 15 hours required for work readiness, so it could be 3 hours a week for 6 weeks. Or if you want to do the work readiness in the first week and then do the post-test towards the last week, that's fine. You're developing this program to meet your specific needs. But the work readiness components is a required part of it. And I'm not going to get into too much of this because a lot of this will be discussed tomorrow when you go actually into the WorkNet and learn the system. But some of the activities that will happen with Illinois WorkNet is exploring careers and training, financial literacy, workplace skills, job search skills, resume writing, applying for jobs, interview skills. And then we have a personal responsibility and safety, which deals with violence awareness, and it'll deal with like bullying in the workplace and bullying at school. And all of these skill sets are necessary skill sets for kids to have to be successful on the job. So this is an important activity that they need to complete with this program. Career education and Illinois pathways. Because of the volume of requests that we had, we did have to kind of refocus this program and make it more intensive in the summer months. So there still will be career education in Illinois, career education opportunities in this. Maybe a little bit more limited than we would have planned if we would have had a longer program. But for training, there could be training courses. A lot of it's probably going to be work-based learning. There could be credentials and assessments that are attributed to that. If you're doing any field trips or having guest speakers, they must be relevant to the career component. So you can't do a field trip to Six Flags or to the local pool. They have to be relative to what the career component is. And an example of this, of where this may be incorporated, one organization that I talked to is working with out-of-school youth, and they're doing a pharmacy tech program in which they are going to be employed like with a CVS, so the work-based learning experience would be with like a CVS or a Walgreens. They'll have coursework outside of the work experience for their pharmacy tech licensing, and they'll have credentials. So that's an example of how the career education component can be incorporated into this program. Targeted careers, and this is something that we had in one of the prior screens, is 16 national recognized clusters. So we're targeting those 16 nationally recognized clusters. If you have something local that you're using for the career education component, that is fine. But you can also use these resources. So we have the Illinois Pathways and the Illinois Programs of Study, which are out there, and they're very good resources to do career exploration. And you can get on there and you can explore a specific career path and find out what the education needs are, what colleges are, what the outlook is for the jobs, and what the educational requirements are. So I recommend using that for your career education. Okay, program steps. So what we want to do is just basically lay it out, steps 1 through 8 here of what needs to be done. So the grant has to have your administrative and fiscal capacity to run this. So first of all, you got to recruit the youth participants and determine eligibility. You need to recruit quality work sites, and that's very important. And you really need to get out there and do like a pre-monitoring review of these work sites to make sure that these youth are being placed in good quality work sites that are safe and have proper supervision. You're going to assess the youth for the proper work site placement, like I just discussed before. If a youth has a specific need as far as a disability that you're placing them with an employer that can meet that need. If they have specific interests that, hopefully you can align their work with their interest and what their future career thoughts are. Provide supportive services and case management. So in this particular case, you're going to do an assessment to see if they have transportation needs, if they need bus tokens, if there's their child care concerns. Work clothes, if they have to have these work clothes to be able to work for that specific employer and an employer doesn't provide it. And then case management, just following up with the youth, making sure that they are being productive, making sure that they are attending work, and any issues that may come up with the youth and the work site as you're moving along. And then you're going to monitor the work sites. In the downloads, we have an assessment form and a monitoring assessment form for the work sites. So you need to be sure to go out, monitor these work sites, and make sure that, like I said, once again, they're safe, they're properly supervised, the youth are showing up, and they're completing their, the numbers of hours that they're reporting on their timesheet. Provide the work readiness pre and post tests and activities, and we discussed that. You can design that to meet your program needs. We anticipate 15 hours over a 6-week period. And then timely and accurate payroll. And we have a required youth wage timesheet that you're going to have to use. But you have to verify timesheets, and then in Illinois WorkNet, we're going to have a payroll upload. So there's going to be several fields that will be populated from your timesheets. So from your timesheets, you're going to produce or fill out this Excel form. And like I said, they'll talk to tomorrow about how to transmit that. And then it's going to be transmitted into Illinois WorkNet. And in WorkNet, we're going to verify, first of all, that the name of the participant that is on the payroll form is actually a participant in the Illinois WorkNet system. So they filled out an application and they're an active participant. We're going to verify that the participant is employed with the employer that's been designated in the system. So I strongly stress that when you're doing timesheets and payroll, just verify. Make sure your timesheets are accurate. Make sure they're completed accurately. Make sure they're signed by the employer and by the supervisor. Make sure that the time's accounted for, and then from that you're going to transmit it into this Excel file that'll be uploaded into Illinois WorkNet, and then it'll come to us. We'll verify that, and then from there we'll do the cash request for doing payroll. Okay, and then provide reports. Illinois WorkNet has a lot of reports in there that you're going to have access to. And I strongly recommend them that you use them, daily. Keep track of these reports. Keep track of how many clients are in the system. What is your plan number that has been placed in jobs compared to your actual number placed in jobs. Keep track on your work sites, on work site capacity. So you really, really need to keep a very close eye on this program, and these reports are a great tool for doing that. The report that's required by DCEO, it's our Universal Department report, and it's called the Grant Status Report. And when you get your grant agreements, there's going to be a report deliverable schedule in there. And this will identify these reports. So basically, if any of you have had grants with us before, you're probably used to this. It used to be called the Project Status Report and the Financial Status Report. Well, starting January 1, it's been consolidated into one report. So it's basically those two reports put into one report, and it's called the DCEO Status Report. That's going to have to be completed, and then along with that, you're going to have to submit a trial balance. So Sheila will get into this on the fiscal side, but your trial balance, your fiscal system has to be able to produce a trial balance that's grant specific. So you have to have fund-based accounting so you can keep track of your revenues and expenditures for this grant separately from everything else. And then that particular report will get out to you at a later date. We're going to have some other Q&As, and so that one we will be disseminating to you at a later date. But that's what we're going to need for all of our reports. And from that, we're going to go into allowable costs. Youth wages, and youth wages have to be at a minimum of 70% of the grant amount. All youth in this program are going to be paid $9 an hour for wages. And in this line item, you can include the employer FICA and workman's compensation. Now, the employee FICA, the youth wage FICA will come out of their wages. So the amount that's added to this line is the employer FICA and then your workman's compensation. And then work readiness is also going to be counted as wages. So when they're participating in the work readiness activity, you need to keep track of those hours, and they're going to be included on the timesheet. And when we go to that timesheet, I'll point that out to you where it's at. But you need to keep track of their work readiness hours. And like I said, work readiness hours should be no more than 10% of their entire time, because this is a work experience program, and so we want the majority of the time spent on the job learning work skills on the job. Program services, max maximum of 20% of the grant can come from can be attributed to this line item, and this is budgeting and also actual costs. So you need a budget no more than that, and you can't spend more than that either. In-program services, that includes your youth case management, your worksite management, and supportive services. So, any, like your intake, your application processing, you're determining them eligible, you're, assessing the youth for work sites and for supportive services, all of that would be counted under program services. And then your worksite management, your, recruiting of your employers, setting up work sites, monitoring the work sites, keeping track that the participants are showing up to the work sites and that the work sites are safe and supervised. And then supportive services, includes your transportation, your child care, and the other supportive services we discussed earlier. Contractual service, an example that I would give of this would be if you're contracting out to do, say, a career education component, and you're hiring somebody to do some training in that particular area. But just keep in mind your contractual and your other costs. If you're putting money in those line items, it has to come from either your supportive services or your administration line item. So anything that I put into those line items come from either program services or admin. And then other is any costs that don't fit into these categories, but you'll have to explain what those other costs are. And then administration, it's a maximum of 10%, and this is going to include like your fiscal, your payroll, all of your oversight of the program is going to be your administrative costs. So, like I said, your payroll, your fiscal office, possibly the office, entrance secretary. Got any other examples?
Just general overhead.
Just general overhead is going to be your administration. Okay, one very important thing that you guys have to have is you need to have a worksite agreement with each of your employers and each of your work sites. General guidelines are the worker trainee cannot replace an existing employee. They cannot reduce the hours of an existing employee. They cannot replace a laid-off employee, so they can't have somebody that was laid off and then all of a sudden these guys come in and take their job. And they can't impair any existing contracts. So if the employer has existing contracts for service, they cannot impair any of those contracts. Now, you guys are going to be responsible for monitoring. You need to do really some pre-monitoring at these sites to make sure that this is a good quality site for these employees or these youth trainees to be put in. And then you're going to be monitoring, do some follow-up monitoring. So we do have a worksite assessment form that's included as a download to this webinar, so make sure you download that. We also have a worksite agreement form that was provided as a download to this webinar. You can adjust that as you need locally. There's quite a bit of information in there, but it's pretty important that you maintain the information that we have in there. But if you need to do some adjusting for local concerns, then you can adjust that worksite agreement. Now, the employers and the related work sites are also going to be put in Illinois WorkNet. And then what's going to happen is the clients will be linked to a work site. So once a client is determined eligible, an application is done, we're on the client, and you've got the employer's information in and the work site's in, then the client will be linked to that specific work site. Another thing that we get a lot of questions on is a supervisor background check. For this particular program, what we're going to be using is called Family Watchdog. And supervisors that need the background check include employee supervisors, so those that are currently working for the employer, or youth supervisors. So if you're hiring some youth in a supervisor capacity, then they need to have this background check. And this is basically what they used last year, too, for the YES program. It was a familywatchdog.com. It's a sexual offender website. And so that's what we're qualifying. That's what we're using for our background check. And that is a free background check, so there's no cost associated with that. Basically, what you do is you go on this site and you enter the supervisor's name. And in some cases, there's common names. So you may have a name come up for somebody that's, Joe Smith is pretty common. Then what your responsibility is going to do is to eliminate and to make sure that your particular supervisor is not the Joe Smith that's on that list. And I haven't done this myself, but it's my understanding that's through pictures. So you can verify through pictures. on that. So what's going to be required in the file is if their name comes up on a common list, you have to print that out, and then you have to document the elimination of the names and explain that, your supervisor is not on this list because, you've documented and you've eliminated the names on there. So that's what's going to be required for the supervisor background check. Okay, and then reports. Like I said, we discussed the reports. Illinois WorkNet's going to have a whole number of reports available to you guys and to us, and we're going to be looking at these reports probably daily to see how the progress is going. So review reports regularly. You need to keep on top of this program. You need to know how many clients you've got in. You need to keep track of your work sites and their capacity. And then DCO reports, like I said, the only one that's going to be required from us is going to be the department status report. And those are due quarterly, so it's due 30 days after the end of a calendar quarter. And what we're looking at with this particular program, since we've kind of shortened the nature of it because of funding restraints, we have a July 1st start date, and we're looking at a December 31st end date. So you'll probably only have 2 quarterly reports that are due based upon the grant agreement when you look at your report deliverable schedule on your grant. And we will, like I said, we'll work with you on these reports, at a later date. We're going to have a couple Q&As, here in the near future too, to go over those, and we'll send out the reports to you, to be completed. So, and I think with that, one thing I do want to say, just make sure you document everything. You document your eligibility. Client files, you need to make sure you have good every client needs a file. And in that file, you have to have their application, you have to have the proof of eligibility, you have to keep the timesheets, keep the supportive services form. Just make sure that you're keeping all the information that's relevant to that client in the file, so when we do come out and monitor, that it's accessible and available and it's complete. And with that, I am going to go to some forms. I want to show you some forms here real quick while we're at it.
So Tammy, while you're pulling those up, can we answer a couple of questions?
Sure, you bet.
Once the timesheets are submitted via the Excel report, will the state generate paychecks or the grantee?
The grantee is the employer of record. So the grantee is going to generate the the paychecks. And you can do it based upon your agency's payroll, however you do. I mean, I wouldn't, some people pay every 2 weeks, so if you're going to do it on your payroll schedule, I've heard some grantees saying they're paying the youth every week. But the grantee is responsible for that activity.
And one more question, is the grantee going to get a lump sum to start to administer the program?
What we're probably going to be looking at is maybe up to 30% of forward funding. So at the most we would do is forward fund the admin and supportive services line item. Wages, we will do cash requests internally. So, and we'll be reporting expenses internally. And Sheila and I have been talking about this. We're probably going to want trial balance submitted more frequently, and we'll let you guys know that. It may even be weekly for a period of time so that we can see what your expenditures are. But with payroll, once you upload the payroll into Illinois WorkNet, there's a check, in that too, to make sure that the client is participating and that they're at the work site. And then we'll verify it in here. And once we feel like we have a good verified payroll, then we will do a cash request. And Sheila says it's 8 to 10 business days from the time you request cash that it's payable. So you will have some money, available up front once we get these contracts executed to draw from. But just remember too, even it's 8 to 10 business days from the time we request the cash. So when I have the timesheet up now, I'm going to go ahead and put, in the pay period, you can put in, let's just put 6:30. Actually, that's not going to work here. You may have to play with this a little bit, but
because you changed that one.
Oh, the one down here.
That Saturday one down there.
Well, I did make a change. Let me just do this here. Sorry guys, I'm messing it up here. But basically, when you get this, if you put a pay period in at the beginning, it's going to give you dates at the bottom. You can adjust these. You can do just what I did and, put in dates that make sense to you, obviously. But you're going to have your pay dates in there. You're going to have a time in, time out for lunch, time in from lunch, and then time out for the day and your total work hours. And that's going to total up to your total week hours. And then right below that is the time on work readiness, and that's where you're going to report your work readiness hours, and that's going to give you the total number of hours for the week. And then we have that for the 2-week period. Now, some of the grantees, if you're paying weekly, you're going to have to adjust this just so it's a weekly timesheet as opposed to every 2 weeks timesheet. But this is the format you have to stick with. We don't want you varying from this particular format. And the one thing I want you to notice up on this line 6, participants scheduled to work 7.5 continuous hours or more must have an unpaid meal period of at least 20 minutes at or before the 5-hour mark. So if they're working, 7.5 hours or more, they have to have at least a 20-minute unpaid, and we're not paying for lunch. We're not paying for food at all, actually. They have to have an unpaid period on that. So this is a timesheet that we're going to expect to see. You're going to give this, the employee has to sign it, the youth employee, and then the on-site supervisor. And then you're going to have to collect, you're going to have to establish arrangements for you guys to get this from the site supervisors on a timely basis so they can come into your office, you can do validation and verification, and then you can put the information on the uploadable Excel file that'll go into Illinois WorkNet. So that's what the timesheet looks like. Then the supportive services form, this is what this looks like, and we have to use this in your file too. This is what we want you to use to document your supportive services. Not only do you have to document that, but then you also have to have the invoices and, to support this. So if you're paying, CTA passes, then you have to be able to document this in your fiscal office, the cost for the passes. And then the supportive services file, this needs to be in the client files also. Okay, and then we have, I'm going to show you the work experience site agreement. This is the work site agreement that we've given to you to be able to use. There's quite a bit of information in here. And in this particular case, this establishes when you're going to get the timesheets and how you're going to get them from the employer. And then you're going to, designate, what your pay schedule is on this too. You're going to provide, basically how many slots, what the job title is, hours per week, number of weeks, and then the supervisor in there. They don't have to be full-time. You can do part-time hours too. So that's up to your program design. And then obviously the signatures that are required. Like I said, you can adjust this form if you need to, but pretty much the content, a lot of that content needs to be in there. Okay, and then this is the worksite assessment. So this is what you can use when you go out and do the monitoring of the worksite. Let me get back to the top of the page here. So here's some questions regarding general assessment and the worksite program management. And then there's like an interview questions down here for the worksite and also for an employee at the worksite. So there's a worker training evaluation right there, and then the program assessment right here. So that's what you need to do for your program or your worksite monitoring. We have also included as forms. This is an income verification determination form for those that you're determining eligible based upon 200% of poverty or less. And that's a form you can use. And then we also have a self-attestation form that you can use if that's needed. And then we have a release form. And this particular form is to be completed by either an entity or by an individual. And basically what this does is it gives us the right to use pictures, to use stories, to use names for PR purposes, in the future. So you cannot use anybody's information unless they've signed this particular document. And then the last thing I want to have you guys do is we have an authorization form. What I would like for you to do is to complete this form. There's two of them. One is to authorize the lead signator. And Sheila, you want to explain who that needs to be?
It needs to be someone who can legally bind the organization to a contractual agreement. Usually that's the executive director or a CFO, someone like that. But you have to be able to bind the organization to this agreement because that's the person who's going to be signing the grant agreement.
And the only things I need for you to complete on this is the grantee name. You don't have a grant number yet, so you don't have to do that. The date, and then the top line, which is the name and title of the existing authorized signator. Don't worry about the bottom lines because you're not assigning a new authorized signature. We just need the top line. And print and sign it so it's legible so we can, we know who it is. We need this to establish the grants. And then another thing that you can do is you can have a designee signator. You have the capacity to do this in the grant when you get it too. On one of the sheets where you sign it, right underneath that, you can designate other individuals to be signatories. Some cases, people like to have somebody else so that they can sign the reports and that type of information. But if you want to assign somebody else besides the primary authorized signature, you can use this form here. So you just do the grant name. The authorized signature needs to print their name and sign here too, and then a date, and then who are you authorizing? We need to know who the authorizing people are, the title and the phone number, and then the authorizing signator, the primary signature, needs to sign off on each person that you're designating. So these particular forms, if you can get these into me today, that would be great, because we are moving grants. We're moving them through the system today. And we just want to make sure we have the right information in the system and we don't have to go back and change it, down the road for this. So, and with that, I think I pretty well covered every